All right. Hello, 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 my friends. It looks like we are live. I'm so excited to be here with you today to talk more about 4 surefire ways you can get ready to raise more major gifts. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. If we haven't met yet, my name's Emma, and I help fundraisers and nonprofit leaders raise more 5- and 6-figure gifts for their amazing missions. So, if you are just joining us now, I would love to hear from you. Let me know, where are you joining us from today? Where are you joining us from today? Go ahead and drop that below. And if you are, hello, 𝗕𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗁, so nice to see you. If you are joining us for the replay, I would love for you to use the hashtag replay so I can come back and say hello and answer any questions you may have about making sure that you are ready for more major gifts for your mission in 2022 and beyond. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. And what I would love for you to do is grab a pen and paper or grab your note-taking implements of choice, because this is a little bit interactive. I'm going to have some good questions for you. I'm going to have some questions I want you to ask yourself when you're thinking about major gifts. And hello, I see someone joining us from the Bronx, and 𝗕𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗃 coming from Watertown, Massachusetts. Welcome, everyone. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I want you to make sure that you're taking notes as we go and just recording some of the questions I'm going to be sharing with you today, because this is definitely an interactive session. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to share with you some what I call million-dollar questions, all right? I want you to start thinking about asking yourself and your team the following million-dollar questions. And the first question is, what is it that you're missing right now that you think would make your life easier when it comes to major gift fundraising? So that's the first question. What is missing right now that you think would make your life easier when it comes to major gift fundraising? I've got a pretty common example. I hear this all the time. I hear from fundraisers, if I just had more time, if I just had a little bit more time, that would make my life so much easier when it comes to major gift fundraising. Now, here's the thing, is more time is not going to magically appear for you unless you make the commitment to yourself to make more time. Successful fundraisers tend to decide on their priorities and then actually make the time to follow through. Now, I want to recognize, for a lot of you, you are already stretched thin. Maybe you're wearing a lot of different hats if you're working at a small organization. So I want to assure you, even small actions, even small increments of time, when you commit to those and you repeat those consistently, that's when you're really going to see results. So I want you to be thinking about this when you're thinking about what would make your life easier when it comes to raising more major gifts. If time is a big one for you, start reframing that a little bit and start thinking is like, how can I carve out, how can I make that time to actually commit to taking even small actions to grow my major gifts? And then how can I schedule that in and follow that through? Right? That's the thing. It's really not necessarily about, a lot of folks get tripped up because they think, okay, I'm going to need to carve out a day a week or 2 days a week. And you can still be successful with major gifts, but the key is really making the time, making that commitment, and committing to small actions, right? We're going to talk about some of the small actions you can commit to perform on a consistent basis that are really going to move the needle for you on the major gifts front. So that's the first question I want to ask yourself. What's missing that would make your life easier when it comes to major gift fundraising? And I want to hear from you too. If you've got some great answers for me, go ahead and drop them below as we are chatting, because I would love to hear from you, to hear what you think would make your life easier when it comes to major gift fundraising. Maybe it's more time, maybe it's something else. All right, so the second million-dollar question I want you to be asking yourself when you're getting ready to raise more major gifts is this: What beliefs do you have about major gift fundraising that might be getting in the way of your major gift growth? So what are the things that you believe about major gift fundraising or major gift donors that might be getting in the way of your growth? Here's a really simple example. I see this getting in the way of major gift fundraising all the time, and it ties right back to our topic today. We're not ready to raise more major gifts is a belief unto itself, right? I hear often is like, we're just not ready yet. We need to do X or Y. We need to have our data in better shape. We need to do something absolute before we can take action on raising more major gifts. That unto itself is a belief, right? Here's another common one. We just don't know anyone with deep pockets, right? We don't know anyone who has the capacity to make a major gift. That is also a belief unto itself. So I want you to think about this now. Think about what are some of the beliefs you might have around major gifts, right? Identify those, write them down. If you're feeling brave, go ahead and drop them below. What are the beliefs about being ready for major gifts that might be getting in your way in your way and stopping you from taking action right now? So that's my second question for you. My third question, my very favorite question, both to ask myself as a fundraiser, to ask my team, even to ask my board or my senior team, is this. If a donor called you tomorrow to offer you a $1 million gift, what would you do with it? And you can scale this up or down depending upon the size of your organization. Maybe you're an organization that gets $1 million gifts on a regular basis. But the key here is to make it a bit of a stretch, right? Make it a bit of a stretch and think, what really seems like an impossible dream donation for us? Maybe it's 10 million, maybe it's 25 million. And ask yourself that if a donor did call us tomorrow to offer us this, what would we do with this gift? I love this because this is a question to ask yourself, your team, your board, your senior team, and it can really shake things up and get you thinking a little bit bigger, right? Because that can be a belief unto itself right there. Here's another one, major donors just don't give big gifts to missions or causes like ours, right? So you start dreaming a little bit bigger when you start creating a bit of a bigger vision. Hello, Laura, tuning in from Toronto. When you start asking yourself questions like that, if a donor called to offer us this impossible seeming donation tomorrow, what would we do with this? Right? Now, here's a place to not get tripped up, right? It's important not to get tripped up here by thinking about, creating an extraordinarily detailed budget. This is a thing that tends to hold people back as well, to sort of say, we'd spend this much here and this much there. This can be about a vision as much as anything. It could even be about a vision for a really large, unrestricted gift. Is what at a high level vision could you achieve? Like, how many more people could you help? How many more lives could you touch with a donation like this? So starting to think a little bit bigger, asking yourself, if this happened tomorrow, because it very well could, if this gift that's larger than any we've ever received or dreamed of before came in tomorrow, what would we do with this? So starting to think a little bit bigger, starting to create that big vision. But here's the key. Don't let this trip you up either, right? I see the flip side of this question sometimes stopping folks and thinking they're not ready for major gifts. They may say, well, we don't know what we would do with a big gift, right? So that's why it's really important to start walking through this and start thinking, what is the vision for this? What is the vision for us? If a donor called tomorrow with an impossibly large donation for us, what would be possible with that gift? What would be possible with that gift? All right, so those are a few questions I want you to ask yourself. I'm going to pause here and take a sip of my water. I have a number of other things to share with you, but I would love to hear from you. If you've been listening to these questions, asking yourselves these questions, what has come up? Have you discovered anything interesting about your major gift readiness? So go ahead, drop that below, take a quick sip of my water, and keep going with some great ideas and questions for you to ask to help you get ready for more major gifts. All right. My second thing I want you to think about is letting go of the idea that everything needs to be perfect before you get started. Okay. If you've met me before and you've joined me for any of these live videos before, you've heard me talking about perfectionism, and you've heard me talking about what an enemy of progress and an enemy of good fundraising perfectionism, pardon me, is. I think it could be, if I had to name just one thing that's getting in the way of growing fundraising, it's perfectionism. And oftentimes perfectionism is simply taken for granted as a necessary cultural feature, right? A necessary feature of major gift fundraising. I see this in many, many organizational cultures, especially at larger organizations, right? There is a perception that donors, major donors especially, demand perfection, that they will settle for nothing less than perfection 100% of the time. Here's the problem with that: is perfection is an impossibility. So we've set ourselves up for failure right off the bat, and not the good kind. We're setting our teams up for failure as well if we expect perfection when we're working with major donors. Because perfection is an impossibility, period, what happens when we expect perfection from ourselves, from our teams? It tends to inevitably lead to overthinking, right? And overthinking leads to more overthinking. So we get stuck in the cycle of overthinking. We get stuck, and that ends up leading to inaction, right? So this is a really big issue we need to recognize and address, is that actually this culture of perfectionism is getting in the way of our readiness for major gift fundraising. So we should not strive to get things more perfect. What we should be striving for is my next tip I have to share with you. A really simple way, a really simple solution to this culture of perfectionism is making a decision and committing. Okay, make a decision and commit. So what do I need to, I'm just checking our questions here. So, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about, can you decide what one small step you can take to build your major gift momentum is? Just think about that. What might be for you one small step that you can take to move your major gifts forward? Might be different for everybody, depending upon whether you're new to major gifts, whether you're committed full-time to major gifts. But think about that, right? Like, oftentimes, one thing I've noticed is the easiest way to take action and build momentum is to pick up the phone on a regular basis and talk to your donors, right? Doing this in person is great. I know a lot of us are not in the place to be able to do that right now, given restrictions and lockdowns and so on and so forth. But right, this is a really simple way to take action and build momentum, talking with your donors on a regular basis. Here's something I've noticed when I'm working with coaching clients. Here's when I see their major gift fundraising really take off. When they make a commitment, they make a clear decision and a commitment to having more meaningful conversations with their donors. And when they schedule time into their calendar to do this, even if it's small increments of time, that is consistently repeated, those tend to be the fundraisers and leaders that have the greatest success. That is a pattern I've noticed. Those who recognize the importance of having meaningful conversations with donors, committing to that decision, scheduling it in, and taking action repeatedly, even if it's a small action, really, really important. And that can tend to set apart the more successful fundraisers from the rest, right? So my tip for you there is to make a decision and commit. I'm hoping that you're writing some of this down for yourself. I'm hoping that you're maybe reflecting and taking note. What is a decision that I want to make, even a small one? What is a commitment that I want to make to move my major gifts forward? All right. And finally, I want to ask you here in my final tip, if you're still on the fence, you may still be on the fence here, and you feel like you aren't ready, your organization isn't ready to grow your major gifts, my final tip is to ask yourself this: What is keeping me from taking action? What is keeping me from taking action? I want you to go ahead and write that out, or better yet, type it below. And I want you to phrase it like this: I'm not taking action on growing my major gifts because, and then you can fill in the blank there. So I want to see if there's any brave folks who will go ahead and drop that below for us. I'm not taking action on growing my major gifts because, then fill in the blank there, either for yourself or go ahead and share that. Now, I want to assure you, if you are finding there are particular things that are holding you back from growing your major gifts, beliefs that you have, things that are going on with your organization, chances are you're not alone in this. This is what I've also noticed, is there's some very common patterns in terms of what tends to hold us back from growing our major gifts. So if it's something you feel, if it's something you believe, if it's something that's holding you back, chances are there are other folks on this call today who are having a similar experience. All right, so I'm just having a quick read through some of our comments, and I want you to be thinking about this. I want you to also be reflecting on, I am not taking action on growing my major gifts because, and that can help sometimes surface some of those beliefs that may kind of be simmering under the surface, or maybe masquerading as absolute truths. That happens sometimes as well. So let's go ahead and write those out. I'm just going to have a quick look through the comments and questions here to make sure I haven't missed anything. All right. Yes, so somebody's just noting, and I'm so sorry, I can't see for some reason if you're joining us on LinkedIn, I can't see your name. I'm thinking it might be Lysandra. I have a comment here. At the moment, we're building our prospect pool, so I'm working on conducting some prospect research, right? This is excellent. And, you know, I'm a big advocate for prospect research. Here's what I have seen sometimes, and this is just a cautionary tale. I'm not suggesting that you are in this place, but I have sometimes seen it become a readiness piece that can hold some fundraisers and organizations back, that they can get caught in the loop of over preparing and over researching before they move forward on major gifts. So as I said, a big fan of great prospect research. It's also good to be aware, and I'm not saying this is necessarily your case, but for many folks, it's very important not to get caught up in that overthinking cycle around prospect research and around preparing to speak with our donors, because that can sometimes lead to also not overthinking and not taking action. One thing I have seen hold many fundraisers back is this idea that I can't move forward with connecting with and building meaningful relationships with my donors because I don't have the research that shows me how much they're able to give. I don't have adequate capacity research to allow me to make decisions and move forward. And I just want to question you there. I want to challenge you a little bit there for folks who are seeing that as a reason to not move forward. Do you necessarily, absolutely need to have that confirmed? Because even that is, you know, even great research, it's very useful, but it unto itself is not an absolute truth or guarantee either, right? So just be cautious there that you're not allowing that to hold you back. That's what made me, when I was thinking about what you mentioned about prospect research, that is something I have noticed that can tend to hold people back is, you know, even though good prospect research is great, it's also important to watch out for it not to come into a cycle of over preparing, because you need a little bit more information. You need a little bit more information before taking action. I've seen that. Hearing from someone here, I think for many people, a belief that is getting in the way is they don't have major donors because they aren't conducting prospect research to uncover their donors' true capacity. Yes, we've got lots of prospect research fans on the on the call today. And absolutely, I think one thing I often talk about is there is no such thing as a big or a small donor, right? There is no such thing as a big or a small donor. Let me explain what I mean by that. This is simply an arbitrary label that we apply to our donors. We often apply it permanently, like it's indelible, based on a single first interaction with the organization, right? So I send in one gift to your organization. an assumption is made that I'm immediately a small donor, because let's say that was a $50 gift. But, right, my first gift does not necessarily have any indication of my capacity, right? So starting with that notion and starting to think there is no such thing as a big or small donor can open a lot of doors, or understanding that these can just be arbitrary labels that we apply, can really be helpful in opening the door to building a healthier pipeline, raising more gifts and wills. So this is a really important thing to think about, is challenging that belief that there is a big donor and there's a small donor. No, it's not necessarily true. I have seen over and over and over again donors who have made initial $50, $75, $500 donations to organizations ultimately end up turning into 6- and 7-figure donors, even beyond that, right? So I think it's a really important belief to shift to help you prepare to get ready for more major gifts. Hi, Joel. So you're a young organization with not a lot of donors, right? Although we have followers, none are responding to our requests for support. This can definitely be challenging, right? Especially if you're a small organization and you're a startup. So if you don't have a lot of donors, it sounds like you do have donors. So this is a place for very small organizations. You can get started as well, right? If you do have even a small pool of donors, these folks are great to start having meaningful conversations with as well. Understanding more about what's motivating their giving to your organization, what inspired them to make that commitment to you, right? What are the values that are really behind their involvement and engagement with your organization and your mission? So starting to have those conversations with your donors, even if they're a small pool, can be really helpful in helping you understand, okay, how might we be able to find more of these folks, right? Are there any commonalities amongst them in terms of their values, their motivations, the whys and wherefores of why they're supporting you? So starting to uncover that and working with what you've got can be a really good first step for organizations that are just starting out. If you've got engaged supporters, I trust you also have engaged volunteers. Starting to uncover that can really help you understand, right? Can help you understand, because typically, here's the challenge. You could have a lot of followers on social media. Those are not necessarily going to be converting into donors, especially, they could be, but especially if you have not quite fine-tuned your case yet, right? So what you want to be looking for is, what is motivating your existing donors? How can you talk about more of that? How can you share those messages more frequently, just to make sure that you're aligning what you're talking about, right, with what your donors care about? Hopefully there's many commonalities there, right? So that would be my suggestion to you, is taking this idea that I have around starting to have more meaningful conversations and doing that with your donors of all sizes, because you will note patterns across the board there. And that can be really helpful to guide you, right? That can be really helpful to guide you. And I always, always, always recommend, even if you're a very small organization, focus on those who are closest to you first, right? So that tends to be your existing donors, your volunteers, who else is in your community that's close to you, right? And again, having followers, sharing on social media is great, but is not necessarily going to be a single standalone strategy for you to be recruiting a large number of donors, especially if you need to do a little fine tuning around, around your messaging, around how you're connecting with your supporters. So I'd really recommend, for organizations of all sizes, you can never go wrong with having more meaningful conversations with your donors. I recommend that whether you're a startup or, whether you're a very large organization with a multi-million, or here you go, even billion. We're seeing increasingly billion and multi-billion dollar campaigns popping up, around my area. I don't know if that's similar for you as well. But that's the foundational elements remain the same, right? So, yes. So I'm just seeing if I have missed any other questions here. So go ahead. If anything else is coming up for you, go ahead and drop that below. if there's anything else stopping you from taking action, and thinking about what those things that you do want to commit to, what small actions do you want to commit to, scheduling in and following through on to grow your major gifts. I'm going to take a sip of my water. And I also want to share with you, yeah, for sure. For sure. There's always fine tuning. I think for every organization, it's ongoing, right? It's ongoing. And it's part of the fun. It's part of the fun is understanding as we're building our cases for support is, making sure that we do have that good donor engagement and feedback. Sometimes what we do is we as an organization decide on what the messaging is going to be. We don't involve our communities in giving us feedback on that. And that can be very, very powerful. And again, when I say communities, maybe it's beyond your existing donors. It could be your volunteers. It could be whoever else is in your community. Looking at that is really important. Now, this actually leads me to share with you a resource if you want to dive a little bit deeper into this topic, along with understanding how to map out that circle of community that you have within your organization. Every organization has one, to understand where your donors may be or should be coming from. I want to suggest that you check out my on-demand masterclass. I have this set up now so you can pick a time that's convenient for you, no matter where you are in the world. And you can find that at majorgiftmasterclass.com/go. And I am going to be talking all about how to raise more six-figure donations for your mission. If you haven't checked that out yet, it's a great resource for you to dive a little bit deeper into raising more major gifts for your mission. So it's majorgiftmasterclass.com/go. I would love to see you there. And I really appreciate you showing up today and all of your feedback. I think that more major gifts truly are possible for you, whether you're a small shop, whether you're a large shop, whether you're just starting out on your own major gift career journey, whether you're a seasoned fundraiser. It is always possible for you to raise more major gifts for your mission. And a really important piece of that is to get ready for more major gifts. And I hope you found these questions that I'm sharing with you today helpful. I hope you do take the time, if you haven't today, to sit down, just schedule in a few minutes to go through this and answer some of these questions that I'm sharing with you today, to start uncovering what might be holding you back from raising more 5- and 6-figure gifts for your mission, because it is worth it. All right, my friends, with that, I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to sign off and hope you found our time today helpful. All right, we'll talk to you soon.